Jesus girl. Jesus girl. Hey, it's the diary of a Jesus girl. Let the wings of the Spirit of the Lord just swirl. You are in it, but you know you're not a part of this world. And for the swine, you should never cast your pearl. Yes, it's just the diary of a Jesus girl. The diary of a Jesus girl. Welcome to the Diary of a Jesus Girl podcast, where we discuss real life issues of the committed Christian woman. This podcast will inspire you to love Jesus and impact lives like Jesus. And now it's time for your host, Crystal Day, award-winning author, speaker, and Christian coach.
Welcome to another episode of the Diary of a Jesus Girl podcast, where we discuss real life issues of the committed Christian woman. And we continue our June special of True Confessions. And this week we're talking to Robin Robbins, right? Robin Robbins, you get it, right? So she's from Atlanta. She's a coach, she's a speaker, she's a best-selling author. And today's episode, we want to talk about confessions of a ex-adult dancer or ex-adult exotic dancer. Now, in Jamaica, we call them go-go, we call them prostitutes, we call them just dancers, I guess. So there are different terms. In the US, it's more adult dancers or adult exotic dancer. But the truth is, we wanted to have this conversation because it seems like sometimes it's very few women are in this, and the truth is worldwide this is very, very popular. There are countries actually that legalize these things, like I think is in Holland, red light districts. So these things are happening, and as a church we want to ensure that we're able to educate and inspire women to not go into this lifestyle, but if they are, that there is a way out through Jesus Christ. Now we know that on this podcast I am very real, and once our guests come on, they are real, and I can tell you Robin is the real deal. Right? She has a book, and we'll talk a little bit about her book. And even just talking to her before, you could hear the passion that she has about how women get into these lifestyle. I know I have friends that are now saved that, talked about the human trafficking side of it, the sex trafficking side of it, and it is a real thing, right? It's a real thing. And sometimes, as the church, we do the sweep under the carpet. If they come into church, they share a little bit of the testimony, but we don't hear the truth behind it all. And I'm here to educate our young people, because I you know I have a mentee, actually. She was in my mentorship program in 2009. And when I found out that she got into this lifestyle, I literally cried, because she was such a brilliant young girl growing up. And it's just something that I really, really wanted to talk about for this month in June. So, Robin, welcome to the Diary of a Jesus Girl podcast. Thank you for saying yes. Just overall, your obedience, but thank you for saying yes to be an interview. Welcome.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just excited, and this is going to be powerful.
To God be the glory. So I met Robin through the Dementia Wellness Life Coaching Group, and I met her in person when we attended a conference, I believe in 2017. And she's just a beautiful soul. She's just like, that those dynamite. So she looks so powerful if you go and look at her pictures, right? She's this powerful, dynamic woman. So, Robin, I want you to tell us a little bit about you first.
Yes, absolutely. So I live in Atlanta, as you stated earlier, but I initially come from New York. So I was born and raised in New York my whole entire life. And the reason why I mention that is because that honestly was the catalyst of how I got into adult entertainment. My mom died when I was 6 years old, and we were in and out of foster care and things like that. And my uncle at the time was dating a woman, which, they then got married. But on my mother's deathbed, she promised that she would take us. And basically, in a quick nutshell, they took us, and after we were going back and forth in and out of different places and foster care and stuff like that, they took us. And my uncle, I think he just was messed up, you know what I mean, in terms of his only sister, my mom, passing away, and he was just really angry, and he was really abusive. So that no longer was a good situation for us, and we wound up going back into the foster care. But her sister had promised to get us back. And so after going through all of these different forms of abuse, feeling the rejection, feeling the abandonment, not having my mother there. My father, was on drugs at the time. So we didn't have a father figure in our lives, and just experiencing the different levels of abuse mentally, physically, emotionally, at that moment, as well as sexually. It just became a whirlwind. You know what I mean? For me, because when you're young and you're coming up in that, it's almost like it's you don't know that there's something different. So it's like, this is my normal. And so just going through life, experiencing levels of abuse. I believe the word is cyclic, if I'm not, mistaken. But different forms of abuse. It was just like a cycle that I couldn't get out of, even growing up. Experiencing abuse. I got raped in the basement of a church. It was just consistent. It was just consistent. I detail it all in my book, but I got to a place where when she finally took us back, her sister, we were so happy. You know what I mean? This was a Christian home, Pentecostal, apostolic, speaking in tongues, all that. And we felt safe for the first time in a long time. We felt like finally we could breathe. And eventually she began to date. And I'm saying she because I tell my story because of the mandate and the instruction to tell it, not to bash people. So my prayer is that you guys can actually follow along. But yeah, she wound up dating. And, at first we was like, oh my God, we love him. We was calling him dad and everything. And we loved him so much because of the structure of our home, being a Christian home. It was very strict. So it was like, you can't go spend the night. Like my grandmother would say stuff. Grandma was powerful, but my grandmother would say stuff like, spirits transfer. And so you can't spend a night at everybody's house. You can't be. So it was I grew up very strict. And so because of that, when he came along, he would advocate for us. He'd be like, listen, they're children, like, let them live, let them go to the park, let's take them to the beach, and we loved that about him until, things turn dark. You never know who a person is hiding behind the mask that they present, or hiding behind what it is that they project to others. And so what we didn't know was that he was an alcoholic. What we didn't know was that he was an addict. What we didn't know was that he was abusive mentally and physically, as well as sexually. And so I think I was around 11 or 12 years old when the first incident happened. And I basically became a sex slave for several years to this man. And I know I was around probably 14, 13 and a half, 14, when I finally said something. And she didn't believe me, and in fact, she made a remark that I'll never forget. She said, well, I don't think he would do anything like that, whatever the case may be. And then she said, well, look at the way you dress. If you dress in that way, you're asking for it. Now, at this point, you're talking to I'm still a child, but I'm a teen. And it wasn't like I dressed inappropriately. You know how they say, cover up, be modest, stuff like that. That wasn't an issue for me at that time because I wasn't even the one buying my clothes. She was. So how could I possibly dress in an inappropriate way to entice this man? You know what I mean? So that that stuck with me for a long, long time. And it was very, very painful. Yeah, and that's just basically the foundation. I wanted to kind of lay that so that as we move forward in this conversation, people have an understanding of what a lot of, what we're going to talk about comes from. But fast forward, thank God, I'm still going through healing. And the reason why I say that is because I learned early on that, sometimes healing and deliverance can be instant. Sometimes it takes time. And then what the Lord has been dealing with me more so even lately is that healing sometimes comes in layers. And that's because the root of it sometimes is so deep and so far down that it's layers of it that have to be excavated and you have to go through sometimes a cleansing process just for that, at that level, for that particular layer. So I am so much better than what I was before. Anybody that knows me personally, they say the same thing. They see the difference in the transformation in my life. I'm not perfect, of course not. I have not arrived, but I use my experiences. I use everything that I've gone through to empower others. And that's at the core, that's basically who I am. I'm just someone that has experienced a lot, that is on a mission to equip, to liberate, and empower others. That's who I am.
Wow, wow. I am so grateful for that backstory of where you started or where you were introduced to, abuse and pain, and you expressed about rejection. And I'm imagining what growing up in foster care should, kind of would be like for such a young person, losing your mom at such a young age. And I know that there are persons that are listening that can relate to various aspects of your story. But on the Diary of a Jesus Girl podcast, we like to start officially with the first question: what's your conversion story? Tell us, fast forward to how did you come to Christ before we get into, what the lifestyle was. How did you come to Christ? What's your conversion story?
Whew, that's good. So initially I got saved around 6.5, 7. So I had accepted Jesus Christ at a very young, tender age. However, fast forward, the moment that I rededicated my life was the moment a friend came to me. They was looking at my phone. I had, when you're in the life or whatever, that life, or in that world, I should say, when you're in that world, um, there's things you have to do to market yourself. You know what I mean? And I had a lot of photo shoots, had a lot of imagery on my phone, and they was looking through my phone and was like, "Oh my gosh, like it looks like the spirit of death is on you here." And I was like, "What? What are you talking about? Get out of here." Now, again, I do have a background. I came from the church, so it wasn't a foreign language when they said that to me. So I'm like, get out of here. And I looked and I saw it myself, but I was in disbelief. And I remember saying, "Okay, God, if this really is that, then I'm not just going to be able to see it on my phone. I'll be able to go look in the mirror and see it. If this is really on me, that means it's on me. So I should be able to go look in the mirror and see it." And I did that. I looked in the mirror, and I saw it plain as day. I can't really articulate what that felt like and what that looked like, excuse me, because it's like you're living, but you're dead. And it was like in that moment, I got insight and I was able to see that I was alive, but I was dying slowly. And that was the thing that let me know that this is a life or death situation. And no matter how you got into it, no matter what happened, you've got to get out or else it's going to cost you your life. So that's what that was for me. And so around that time, I had another friend that was going to a church because I had not been to church in, oh my God, I couldn't tell you how long, forever. And she was like, yeah, I'm going to this church, whatever. They're non-judgmental. You truly can come as you are, and all this other stuff. And so we gave the church a chance, and that's how I rededicated my life. And what's amazing is that once I rededicated my life, it wasn't like, oh, now I'm saved and that's it. No, it didn't work like that. It was a gradual process. I had to ask myself, okay, now that you're coming back into Christ, this is something that you're not going to be able to hold on to. And I had to ask myself, well, how can I get out? Because this was my livelihood. I cannot even begin to express to you the level of money that I made. As entrepreneurs, we're trying to make it to 6 figures and make it to 7 figures. And, we have these goals that we make as entrepreneurs, because for the purpose-centered entrepreneur, we know that those monetary goals also equates to the level of impact that we are making. It's almost like a measure of how many people you're reaching. And so I can't even begin to tell you. I could, but for the safety of the IRS, I will not. The money that I saw in the industry, it was crazy. It was crazy. But I had to find a way to adapt. And it was such a process mentally, because you get used to making certain amounts of money daily, not in a week, not every 2 weeks. You get used to and accustomed to making a certain amount of money within a certain amount of hours and a certain amount of money within the day. And when you have that level of money and that access like that, it can be a war within yourself. So for me, as far as converting, it was a process. I went through so much healing, so much deliverance. I have 1,000 stories about the encounters that I even had spiritually during that time, but that I also detail in my book. But I had to be shifted. It was like, how the Bible talks about having a renewed mind? No, I literally lived that experience. And so much of my mind was warped. It had been twisted because I had become accustomed to that world. So there was a lot of mental alignment and renewing that I had to go through to be able to see things as it is and all of that and accept those things. Then it was also, I had to die to what I had became accustomed to. It was just a lot of rewiring. That's the word I'm looking for. I went through a lot of rewiring, but it was worth it. And what blesses me the most about the entire conversion process was that the one thing that I was sure that I probably would never be able to do again, which is dance, was the thing that God allowed me to do. So he basically took what I had tainted, because, I grew up dancing. Dancing is in my blood. That's something that I've been doing since I could walk. And I danced at parties, like regular, like kid parties and stuff like that, and it always showed extreme ability. I began to dance in the church and all of that. Like, so I always danced. And so he took that and he cleaned it up and, allowed me to dance again. And so that right there, it was me coming into the church, going through that converting and rewiring process. And then it was almost like God knew I had to have something that would help hold me accountable. So it was like, here, remember this? Remember how you used to dance before me? Remember how you worshiped? Yeah, I need you to do that again. So that was the
Wow.
thing that helped me to really stay strong on
Wow.
not going back, because I can't get up before the people and minister. You see what I'm saying? So it
Yes,
was a
yes.
sometimes, and so I'll say this too, because this is important. I'm kingdom. I'm not church at all. I'm a believer. I don't really do the whole Christian thing. And it's a reason why I say that, because there is so much man-made stuff, ritually and traditionally, that keeps people in bondage. And because of that, they'll never know Christ. And
Wow.
that is blood
Wow.
that's required at people's hands. So I walk, I'm not perfect, but I walk with the love of Christ. I don't judge. I don't judge. I do not judge. And I think as the body, if we did that more, if we came to understand people and understand their stories and what they came from, you know, God would be able to get so much more glory. You know what I mean? And sometimes it is having that person be in a place where they are ministering that saves their lives, versus the notion of, oh, your life ain't right, so sit down. Because I came up from that. Oh, you're not right, sit down. But what if me ministering was the only thing that saved my life? What if me
Wow.
ministering was the only thing that kept me accountable? What if
Wow.
me ministering was the thing that kept me on a cross? Thank you, Jesus. What if me ministering was the only thing that would keep me in a state and in a posture of repentance,
Wow.
and asking God to deliver me? What if that's the only thing? You just took away my lifeline by telling me to sit down because you deemed I wasn't worthy enough or a vessel of honor enough
Wow.
to minister through word or through dance or whatever your vocation is in the body. And that's why the Bible makes it very clear as far as the wheat and the tear. That's for Jesus to do. And the problem with the body is that we're trying to do it and we're out of order.
You're
That's for
preaching.
God to do. That's for him to do. And if we let him separate the wheat from the tear, this world would be a better place.
Wow.
Truly.
Wow. Girl, you're just preaching. You like, I'm just speechless. I'm just like, listen, I'm gonna listen to her for the rest of the podcast. Thank you. There's something that you said that I wanted to bring out. You said that God used the thing that was tainted, and I always say these things because sex is of God, but the world has tainted it, based on you dancing is your act of worship, but the enemy used that same gift that God has given you, to do something negative. But the Lord is saying, I gave it to you, so use it unto me as an act of worship. And it's what it you said, that's what held you accountable, because you don't want to go into the presence of God knowing that you are not living right. You don't want to minister to people knowing that you're not living right. So it challenged you daily to live a life of repentance and obedience because you want to
Yes.
please your king. And that's what I heard. That's what
Yes.
I heard. And it what the Holy Spirit just revealed to me when I came to Christ. I remember when I started to speak, and persons kept saying, oh, you're trying to seek, just you want to build a brand and you want to seek platform and stuff. But what I found for me, as you said, speaking to young people especially was one of the ways that gave me that opportunity to always go back to Christ, because as you said, you don't want to misrepresent God. So because I know I was a minister, I was sharing it, there are certain decisions that, when you think about going back to the world, you're like, no, it's not worth it, because I'm using my gift, and I want to thank you for that. Now, my question, I want you to tell me a little bit about how did you get into the exotic dancing? How did you get into that? What was, tell us. I don't think I know, to be honest, I know certain aspect of what that lifestyle could look like, but I want the listeners, because so many people take it for granted that people know, and the truth is many don't know. So I want you to take the listeners to how did you get in? Share. You were sharing some statistics to me. I'm like, I was so overwhelmed when you were talking about it. Share those truths to the people that are listening right now.
Absolutely. So basically, how I got in was through the abuse, right? So I'm going to speak to this thing on a couple of levels. So first, the way in is through, where you have been compromised, if that makes any sense. So I was already compromised through all of the abuse and the things that I had sustained. Now, secondly, the way I got in was survival. Um, so the first experience was I need to survive. I need help. I had a friend, they was letting me stay at their house. I had basically ran away and went AWOL from the group home that I was in at the time. And they was allowing me to stay with them in the basement of their house. And after a while, she was like, listen, my dad is starting to notice that food and stuff is going like faster than usually. So we're going to have to do something where you could, take care of yourself or whatever. And so the older sister, she was like, I got this thing that I do on the side, you know what I mean, to make money. And that was my first introduction. So, which is trafficking. A lot of people think that or may think like, oh, if you have a pimp or a handler or whatever you want to call it, a madam, whatever, that's not trafficking, but it is. That's like the first form of it. And so although it was brought to me on a subtle level, and although it was brought to me in a sense where, you got to make money to take care of yourself, who's to say that that was really the case, right? Who's to say the food was really going faster than usual? We'll never know, right? But it was a introduction that made sense. And because they had been helping me out so much, I trusted them. You know what I mean? And so I got into that situation, and she went from being my friend to trying to be my pimp. Completely different person. Just turned, And so that was my introduction in. I went from that person to literally in that hotel, coming down the steps, trying to get out of that situation because she tried to fight me and all of that. And I literally ran into two other friends that were friends of my stepfather, which was my abuser. And I thought, oh my God, this is great. Like, because they know my family. They done been in my house. I have served them food. I have given them sweet tea. Like, they know me. They know my family. They will help me. They know my mom. They will help me. Not knowing. I used to think when they came over my house, I used to think they were drug dealers. Right? Never knew what they really was doing. And so I went from a bad situation to a worse situation, thinking because they knew my family that they would help me, but they just trafficked me further. So now you had two men against one young girl. And it was just a very, very horrible situation. So that was my introduction to answer that part of the question. That was my introduction into the industry. And so that was, prostitution basically. And, I had another friend after I experienced that. When I came back to the group home, my roommate, I was like, because she was like me, like her family wasn't helping her. They wasn't sending her no money or anything like that. And, when you are in these group homes and stuff like this, and you don't have family and people that's helping you, and all you have is what the state is giving you. What people don't understand is that the state does not give you much. The government does not give you much. So we would have a quarterly stipends of $125. And again, that's quarterly. So that means I'm expected to buy my clothes. And now, mind you, I have big feet, and so in New York, the cost of living is high. And so my sneakers, if I was to buy some sneakers, my sneakers alone, at the very bare minimum, if let's say I bought some K-Swiss, it's a brand, but it's not like a brand like Nike or Jordan where it would cost that much, that'll still run me about $75 to $80. And I only have 125. And then they'll take you shopping to places like J.C. Penney and stuff like that, which we know is expensive. And you expect me to get shoes, get clothing and underclothing. And, as a woman, there's things you need with $125 every quarter. That's every 3 months. Seasons change. I'm from New York. We already know that we have terrible winters. My coat for the winter is 100 at the minimum. What am I going to do? You know what I mean? So it was a survival situation. And I remember asking my roommate, like, how are you getting money? Because she stayed with more than enough jewelry, everything. How? I know you're like me. Your family don't look out for you. How are you making this money? And that's how I got introduced to the club. So that was my way into adult entertainment. Now, in terms of the statistics, a lot of people look at adult entertainers is what we call them here. Well, the reason why I was an adult entertainer is because I didn't just dance. I did basically everything available in adult entertainment except for porn. So that's why I'm an ex-adult entertainer. Most people are just, like you said, ex-dancers or ex-exotic dancers. But the reason why I'm an ex-adult entertainer is because of what all I did when I was in the industry. And so...
No, I don't want to interrupt, but I've no clue what an ex-adult entertainer. Like, only know about the dancing. What else?
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, I was an escort. Okay. So there's a difference between prostitution, which in the way I was, trafficked into it. But I was an escort. I was also a dancer. I, was a mistress. I did the whole BDSM scene. I did the phone operator, the phone sex stuff. I had my own agency where, I would dispatch other dancers and stuff. We did, the whole sensual body rubs. I'm talking about anything that you could think of within that industry. I did it. And I got several offers to do porn. But in the back of my mind, I always knew that this wouldn't be my life forever. It was like something within me. I knew. And so I said, there are a lot of things that I could take away, but that I would never be able to take away. Once it's on tape, I won't be able to get that back. And so for that reason, no matter how much money they offered me, I refused to do porn. But I traveled. I was a featured dancer where I traveled to many different places. I did a lot. This really was like a business in a way of living for me. But that's that business gift that I've always had. I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit. And so for someone like me, that's like that, going into an industry, I'm going to find ways to scale it. And that's exactly what I did. I had my hands in everything. And when I looked up, I had a whole entire agency that I was running. With all of these different types of services that are considered adult entertainment. And I'm probably missing a few, but those are the ones that come straight off of my mind. So yeah, that is, the hard truth, but it is what it is. And for me, as far as statistics, as I was stating earlier, a lot of people don't realize that, a lot of the women that are in the industry, number one, are trafficked, meaning this is not their choice, but it's a situation that they are forced into, whether it is through a pimp or a handler, whatever the case may be. It is what it is. Secondly, a lot of people don't know that for a lot of the women that come into these situations because of the need for survival and or a traffic situation, they don't understand that the reason for the most part why they stay is because mentally they believe they can do nothing else. They become so accustomed to it. They become so accustomed to the amount of money. And that's why I talked about rewiring earlier. They become so accustomed to it that they don't feel that they are good enough or worthy enough or that they are just even enough, period, to do something else and be able to succeed. A lot of the women that are, and men too, because there's men in the industry too, women and men, a lot of the women and men in the industry also, 85% of them, and these statistics is based on the state of Georgia and on sex trafficking and human trafficking, just so you all know where the source is from. About 85% of the individuals in the adult entertainment industry, it doesn't matter what sphere they're in, come from distorted, crucial, abusive backgrounds. 93% listen to these numbers, 93% of these people want a different route, but just don't know how or don't believe that they can. Those are huge numbers.
Yeah.
But yet you have people turning up their nose and doing all of this, not knowing that all you will have to do is sit down and have a conversation, be educated, non-judgmental. And that's why the burden for that is why I had initially started my nonprofit, which wound up dissolving because the work, once you get into that level of work, I had the heart for it because I've been there, done that. I lived it. But the teams that I were building, the volunteers, they could not do it. It is, people don't understand how it will, the way it will burden you. You have to be built. You have to have a grace for this thing. And the way it will burden you and the things that you will hear, if you don't have a grace for it, you will not be able to stomach it. And so I was forced to basically dissolve my nonprofit and close my doors. We were working with exploited young girls and women, helping them transition out and get the help that they needed mentally, spiritually, and just with everyday skills and stuff so that they could transition back into society. But it's a real work that needs to be done. And a lot of the times, like, I know a lot of churches try to get into this work. And that was one of the functions of the nonprofit. We were educating. I would go and speak and I would educate churches because there's just certain things that you have to know trying to do the work. You can't go and this whole bashing and Bible beating, like this just whole thing that the church does, it just does not work. It will not work. If you are not coming with the true, unadulterated love of Christ, it's not going to work. You're not going to win a soul that way. And then number one, be educated enough to understand what you must have in place to actually help them. So many people go and they think it's cute. Oh, I'm just going to go in the club and I'm going to talk to some lady. Do you actually have the resources in place? Let's say you do talk to them and they do give their life to Christ. Do you have the resources in place to help sustain them as they transition? Because that is a necessity. You cannot take someone from making that amount of money daily and not have resources. Do you know that they're going to need therapy, right? And counseling. Do you know, oh my gosh, another statistic, about 83% All the people in adult entertainment industry are suffering from some type of mental illness. A lot of people don't know that too, because of the level of abuse that they've endured. So you have what's been reported is PTSD, which that's what I was suffering from. PTSD, depression. Some people have dissociative disorders. You know, and you know, I just thank God He is such a healer. I'm telling you, I know from experience He is such a healer, because a lot of people would say, "Well, how does one get that if you're in the industry?" And what a lot of people don't understand is that when you're in the industry, you're not going by your real name. You're not going by who you really are. You have to create a persona. This thing is just so much deeper than
Wow.
people could ever understand. And that's why I know God, that's why I know that it was so necessary for me to go on rest and to realign and recalibrate, because it's so important that I share my story. And it told me to do it. I wrote the book. I did the nonprofit. The book succeeded, but the nonprofit failed. I don't know what else to do. And so I kind of gave up. But he told me, no, just share your story. I'm going to handle the rest. You just continue to share your story, and it's going to come together. I'll handle the rest. But there's just so much help that a lot of the individuals need. Now, of course, I'm not going to have you be blinded. There is also a percentage in the industry where, I mean, they like what they do. They like what they do, and they love what they do, and they have no desire to get out. And I'm the type of person, like God, He doesn't force Himself on anybody. He's a free will agent. So it is the same with me. I model that. I do not judge someone that likes what they do and wants to stay there. The most I could do is, if I feel led to pray or whatever the case may be, I'll do that. But other than that, I do not infringe or judge or then be nasty and ugly and mean to a person that wants to stay, because they have the right to choose, just like we have the right to choose, right? So you do have those people in the industry that are like that, and for whatever their reasons are.
Wow. Wow. I, I mean, you, I'm sure persons are just listening, and as you said, it's so easy for persons that they don't know much about the industry. They have never had the, the opportunity or being introduced to that industry to stay afar and be judgmental. When you think about probably women that are doing pornography, women that are on the road in Jamaica, you have different roadsides that people are on, ladies are on, they are naked on the road, and persons will pass, and it's almost like in disgust. And you are saying that there are so many of them that because of livelihood, and I have a friend, Stacy Smith, and she has a human trafficking, sex trafficking organization here in Jamaica called Pursuit International, where she and her team goes out and pray and stuff and try to help just women that are in this industry. And she's always so burdened, as you said. She's always so overwhelmed, and especially to get help. And now that you mention it, I understand more now the importance of people, in the church. If you don't feel grace to minister to these people, this is why you need money. Why not sow into some of these ministries?
Yes.
Sometimes we are sowing so much for our breakthrough. And Holy Spirit, I'm sorry, I'm gonna say it, but we go into these churches sowing into these prophets and these big to big, charismatic preachers,
Uh-huh.
so that
Uh-huh.
we can get our blessings. But somebody that, like you, that started a non-profit, we are not thinking about sowing into that seed, not realizing that's a way that we are saving a life. And
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, I could have been in that industry. I think my father, especially, my parents, but especially my father, is probably one of the main reasons why I didn't even get into that, because he was very strict and he was very focused on me getting an education, right? But I remember there are two other girls that I grew up with in my, like, we used to play together. Two of them went into that, and we're from the same community, same house. We eat out of the same pot, And the only difference between me and them is because I pursued education, right? And because I had my father there pushing me. But I could dance, like, I could dance very well, and I could see myself doing that,
Yeah.
and it's truly the grace of God, truly
Mm-hmm.
the grace of God, why somebody like me, my story didn't turn out differently, right? So I empathize so much, because I knew at any time that could have been me, but to God be the glory. And I'm so grateful for you, and how the grace of God snatched you back out. You experience it. You said you had an agency, so you had a real boss, right? The
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
money to walk away, and you can tell me, because I'm almost sure to come out of that, to try to get back into society. How did you deal with that financial aspect of it? I want to know. Like,
Ooh,
I'm
yes.
because people always judge the rich young ruler in the Bible, or he was, like, people judge him, but I'm imagine having certain, like, having this and walking away, not sure. Probably you probably have to go. So probably you had your own apartment, certain kind of
Oh
car,
yeah.
and people are
Mm-hmm.
like, "Why not choose Jesus?" It's not always not that we don't want to choose Jesus, but the truth is sometimes it's scary to
Yeah.
believe that you're going to have to lose all of this. It's scary to feel like I'm going to have to go back through lack. It's scary to feel like I have to go back through hunger, and so
Yeah.
how did you deal with that part?
Thank you so much for saying that, because that is so real, and we don't talk about it enough. First of all, the support system that that's number one. Um, People praying for me and believing that I could do it. I definitely would say was number one. Number two would definitely be um, just really, really in that place of not wanting to die. That's what it boils down to for me personally. I know it's different for everybody, but for me, it's remembering and knowing that if to stay is to die, to leave is to live. That, having that support system, having that consistently, I'm talking, when I say having that in your mind, I'm talking about waking up with it, going to sleep with it. I'm talking about, like, really having that in your mind on replay. To stay is to die, right? But to leave is to live. You are very right. I had a luxury apartment, a 3-bedroom. And I have no kids. So I had a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, luxury, gorgeous apartment. Had an amazing car. I had 2 locations in affluent areas where we rendered services. I had a lot of things. And monetary wise, it was nothing, right? But I had to keep coming back. Is this worth my life? And I know for everyone that goes through their process is different, but for me, and I'll just say it like this, and not to be funny, it just is what it is. Because of the call on my life and because of who I am in the kingdom, that's why the stakes were so high. That's why for me to live is to die. Now to stay was to die. Now I want to make this clarification. With anybody in the industry, you are dying a slow death. I just want to put that out there, okay? Anybody in the industry, you are dying a slow death. And we probably don't have time for me to get into that the way I would like to, but you are dying a slow death. But for me, and I'm in the marketplace, and I was in a place where I didn't lead with it, but I am also a minister and I'm a prophet. I do not lead with that. But as God is realigning me, things are shifting and changing where I'm in a place now where it is what it is. And I have to, be pronounced in certain things versus just being comfortable with there being an undertone. And you know what I'm talking about, Crystal. Like, there's certain rules in the marketplace. And so it's like, well, I don't want to, offend or make people feel like if they don't believe what I believe, that I can't work with them and stuff like that, because I know who I'm called to. And a lot of the times, it's going to be people that don't believe. with where I come from and my story and everything, it's going to be people that don't believe. However, I tend to attract a lot of believers. A lot of people that I work with in the marketplace were believers because of the spiritual undertone that's there. Anyone that's a believer can read my stuff or look at my messaging and know that I'm a believer just by the vernacular. However, I say all of that to say that the process mentally of understanding that, I literally will lose my life. And when I say literally, I literally mean literally. Like literally, the Holy Spirit spoke to me one time when I was in the club and said to me, "What are you doing here?" Like, it gets real deep for me, specifically because of the call that's on my life. Does that make sense? So when I say a literal death, when I say a literal death, I mean, I have even heard the voice of the enemy. When I was 13, he tried to kill me, literally. I detail all of that in my book. But I've heard the voice of the enemy literally tell me, if I ever, that he would take my life. So what that means is, in other words, if I ever came over into his legal jurisdiction again, he would take me out. I hope this is making sense.
Yeah.
I try, I hope it's making sense, but having that death bounty on me is what kept me fighting. But we also have to understand that it is a process and a rewiring. Like you said, not wanting to experience lack, not wanting to do, I lost everything. I lost the apartment. I lost everything. But the peace that I had in my spirit, I can't. I'm at a loss for words. I'm truly at a loss for words. The peace that I had, the support that I felt, the love of God that I began to feel, because a lot of these individuals do not feel loved. Oh, they suffer severely from that. They feel worthless. They feel unlovable. So to leave all of those material things behind, and to come into those things that I was missing is what helped me. So it was like, I don't have all of these material things, but all those pieces that I was missing when I was in the industry, I now have. And I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? So, and I'm not going to sit here and make it seem like, oh yeah, y'all, it was just all spiritual and it was easy. No, like, I detail in my book, I tried to leave the industry before I had that experience that ultimately converted me. I tried to leave the industry twice. I tried to leave the industry the first time because my sister got pregnant and, she needed, help and stuff. But I was like, I can't help you with these babies and bring these children into the world. And I don't want them to be exposed to that. So for their sake, I tried to leave the industry. but because of their need, I couldn't. So I had that first time I had to compromise and stay so that monetary wise I could support. The second time I tried to leave the industry, I tried to leave the industry because I was pregnant. And I did not want to bring my own child into that. And I got a job working at Target. I went from making thousands of dollars in one day to making like $8 in some change or seven something an hour. And it was no way. After months, I was just like, I cannot do this. And I went back. So I wanted to share that because I don't want people to think that this is easy and it's a hop, skip, and a jump. And if you are actually, you may be listening and you're in your process, I don't want you to feel like just because you went back, that means it's a lost cause. You just got to keep trying. Third time was a charm for me, though.
And so you said the last time that you came out, it was that, debt bounty, that like conviction that if I don't leave, I'm gonna die. But also this time you have us at a certain level of accountability. That was different from the first two time. But how did you manage to, in terms of financially, know that you walked away the third time? How did you kind of try to get back financially to take care of yourself?
Yes. So having that support there was a great help and contribution so that everything wasn't on my shoulders.
Okay.
But at the same time, I had to do, like you said, the difference from the first two times was having that bounty there and then having the accountability. But also what was different was this time around, I was so serious about getting out that I had to ask myself some important questions. So it was like, okay, you want to get out. You know you don't want minimum wage. Well, you don't have an education. You need to get an education. So the first thing I did was I went and I did some trade program as a CNA. I did the trade program as a CNA to get a trade under my belt so that I could work and make at least above minimum wage. I then, went back and at the same time and got my GED, right? Because in order to graduate as a CNA, you have to have a GED. At least at the time that I went to school. I don't know what their rules are now. So I was relentless in this. I paid for this training out of pocket. During that time, I had come out of the industry. The only thing that I was still doing at the time was body rubs because I still had to support myself. So I had stopped doing everything else, the sugar daddies, all that stuff. I stopped doing everything else, the dancing, all of that. And I was only doing the body rubs. And I put myself through school and I got my GED, and I got my CNA trade under my belt, and I began to work. And so that also was the difference. I had to ask myself, just, well, what do you need to come out? You tried to come out before, but it was unsustainable because you didn't have any education. So all you could get was minimum wage. So we need to make sure we get an education this time so that we can be sustainable. And that's exactly what I did. And so I was making like $9-10 an hour, which wasn't too big of a difference. But at that time in Georgia, it was more than enough to, have your own place and live and, take care of yourself and stuff like that. Another thing also that I would say would be the difference was because I went back to church. So going back to church and also having dance as an accountability. So all those things together is what made the difference the last time and why I haven't been back. I'm literally about to celebrate coming up almost on 10 years of being out of the industry and being free.
Wow. I was very intentional in asking you because I love to be practical. So once I do an interview, I like to be practical. So if somebody that is listening that is into the industry, what are some of the practical steps that they would have to take? Also understand that the steps that she has taken is not just if you're stuck in like the prostitution, because if you're stuck in any kind of lifestyle, whether it be drugs, alcohol, it doesn't matter what kind of, it doesn't matter what you're stuck in. She has actually shared a blueprint or some practical strategies. So one, she talked about having that self check, heart check conversation. If do I really want to come out? You understand? Do I really want to? And when you're able to admit to yourself, yes, I want to, but what do I need to do? She said, I got support. God support, right? Sometimes we try to do things on our own. I don't want anybody in my business. I don't
Yes.
want anybody to know anything about me. There's nothing new under the sun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, some people
Mm-hmm.
will misjudge you, some people will misunderstand you, but understand if your desire is greater, then you don't care. You get to a
Mm-hmm.
place where you don't care. Number
Mm-hmm.
three thing that she said was, I put together a plan. Listen, do you
Mm-hmm.
guys hear that these are practical strategies in life? She put together a plan. Okay, okay, I attempted before and it didn't work. So what do I need to do differently? Okay, some of the money, you know what? I'm gonna get my GED. I'm gonna get a certification. Okay, because I know that, oh, like she, like, listen, people, are you hearing? It doesn't matter what industry you're stuck in right now. There is a plan, a practical thing. She talked about getting the necessary deliverance. She talked about getting possibly counseling. Some of you that have experienced extreme depression, you have experienced extreme anxiety, right? Sexually abused, molestation, right? Emotionally abused. It's okay to get counseling. You must, and she
Yes.
she spoke of that like she was very clear, and also getting spiritual deliverance. Understand that the deliverance is not a one-time thing. After 10 years, I don't know if you heard what she said in the initial stage. I'm still going through my healing. That's what she said, in the initial stage. After 10 years, I didn't like 10 years, and she's saying, I'm still going through my healing, right? Sometimes you want to be delivered and we just want to make noise and it's just a one. No, it's a process, because she mentioned the root, she had to deal with the root. She spoke about, I think, number 5. She said she went into church, she got in plugged into fellowship. She got plugged into fellowship. She's number 6. She said she got active in ministry. Many of us come to church and we just want to sit down and we are sitting on our giftings. You can't, if you don't have accountability, then it's going to be so easy to run back to things. So get involved in choir, get involved in the women's ministry, serve on the ushers team, do things that you are now accountable for.
Yes.
The last thing, the 7th thing that I heard, that she said, Holy Spirit, bring it back to memory. She spoke about just not just thinking about herself, but thinking about how can I use my story. Thank you, Holy Spirit, to bring that. Right? She spoke about how can I serve, how can I go out and minister to somebody else based on what I've been through. And that's why she started a nonprofit. I don't know if you hear what she has said, that it became a point that is no longer about her.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted to help people. She wanted to share, how others can be freed. And even this is why she wrote a book about it. Something that could basically, people can say, that would disqualify her from ministering, because she's a minister. She's an
Yeah.
ordained minister of the gospel. And something that seemingly could disqualify her is actually the thing that God uses to qualify her to say, listen, it's not about you. I want to use you. I want to use your story for my glory. I'm not sure if you guys are listening to the practical things that she said. listen to the practical things that she has said.
Yeah.
That you cannot be too far gone. Go ahead,
Yes.
Robin.
Yes. No, that's wow, that's powerful, powerful. I wanted to say this because with my experience when I did have the nonprofit, everybody's transition out is different and it looks different because everybody's background is different. Some people may already have education, or some people, may not, or whatever the case may be. Some people may not have support, may not be able to have access to support. And so your plan is going to look different. And I've helped when we did have the nonprofit, we've helped women devise a transitional plan to get out for those who don't have support. And that sometimes looks like, okay, you're in the industry and you're working, but now you become so intentional about your spending habits, and you start to save and do things like that, and you give yourself a deadline. You say, okay, within 3 months time, or within 5 months time, within 6 months time, I will, be working this plan and be able by this date to walk out of here indefinitely. And God will, I'm telling you, some people think, oh my gosh, well, how again, the judgment, how you just gonna, no, you gotta come out, Like, everybody's situation is different. You know what I'm saying? And when your heart is postured right and your motives are pure, God will cover you. And people don't believe it, but yeah, he will cover you.
Yeah.
Because although you're in it, you've made a thank you, Jesus. Even while being in it, you've made a covenant with him. See, this is the type of stuff people don't like to talk about because it could be considered the gray area and it could be considered murky, because we are taught, separate yourself, come out from among them, all this stuff. And we don't take into context. And this is why it's important to rightfully divide the word and study the word. We say these things, but they're often said and twisted because they're taken out of context. You know what I mean? So yes, you're going to have to separate yourself and come out from among them within context, though. Meaning like, once you are where you are, there's certain things you're not going to be able to do and stuff like that. Okay, yeah. But who is talking about while I'm in it? Who's talking about while I'm actually waiting? God's love is so great and so deep. Paul said it the best. What could separate me from the love? See, this is the stuff we don't talk about. What can separate me? Nothing can separate me. So what does that mean? That means if I'm pure in my heart and in my motives and in my intention, and if my posture is right, and if I commit these plans to God, he'll establish my way. And nothing that I'm in can separate me. So that means even while I'm in it, I can be covered. Even while I'm in it, I can be covered.
Wow.
We don't want to talk about that. So I say all of that to say that there's a grace, if you are truly serious, depending on your situation, because God is not blind. He knows your situation. He knows who has the ability to have access to support and who truly really just doesn't, depending on your situation. Especially if you are trafficked in, you're not going to have no support. If the organization is not helping you, if there's something out there helping you, providing you the resources, you're not going to have any support. You're going to have to do it on your own. But I just wanted to say that to say it still can be done. I don't want you to feel hopeless if you're listening saying, okay, yeah, I heard the practicality and that sounds great, but my situation is different. So what about me? I'm speaking to you right now. If you're pure in your heart, pure in your posture, and you truly want to get out, okay, you can still devise a plan, but you need to commit those plans to God so that you are covered. And why is that important? You don't want to be pulled down any further in the rabbit hole that you are already in. If you have to work it that way. Does that make sense? So I've helped women that didn't have access to the support. devise a plan where some was able to come out in 3 times, because everybody, what they make is different, and really had to work with them and coach them on their habits, because when you're in that industry and you're making money fast like that, you don't have good spending habits. Let's just put it out there. You get the money so fast, you're going to spend it fast, and your mentality normally is, well, I can make it back tonight. So you have to become intentional about your spending habits. You have to begin to shape and shift mentally, mindset-wise, have a shift in your paradigm to understand, I need to, okay, how much am I averaging a day? Let's map that out. All right, this percentage of everything that I'm bringing in, I'm going to create a nest egg. Every day, this is the percentage that I'm creating a nest egg. This is something that's not being touched. This is something I'm not messing with. If you need to put it in an account, whatever you need to do, create that nest egg so that you can walk away and not have to worry about the support of others, because you have a nest egg that will see you through for 6 months, that will see you through for a year, while you go back and get a trade and get education and get whatever it is that you need. Do you see what I'm saying? So I wanted to put that out there for the one that doesn't have the support.
Yeah.
Because I was her when I tried to get out the first 2 times.
Yeah. 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 And I think, what you said too, that was so profound. Even though you failed, don't see yourself as a failure. So you failed coming out the first 2 times. Some of you are listening this and you have backslided twice already. So you got saved, you love God, but you backslide. And it might not be prostitution or anything. You could be, you go back to partying, you go back to sex, like whatever, you backslide for whatever reason. And then you went back to the altar again and you gave your life to the Lord and you backslide again. And you're like, you know what, this Christian life is not for me. What Robin is saying is that no. It's okay that you have failed, because God's love has not stopped, right? He says he will go into the pits of hell for you. That's what he says. So if you have failed, you have backslide 5 times, it's okay. What he's saying is, come back to me. Come. Look at what you have done. What got you there? What was your trigger that allowed you? What did you do, or what can I do differently, right? And some of the things that we shared before, go back and listen to what we have shared. Which aspect of that plan you need to work on? Okay, I don't have accountability right now, but can I start being very intentional about going to church every week then? Let the word of God start penetrate your heart. Instead of, listening to certain music, guess what? Every day I'm going to listen to a YouTube video. I'm going to listen to some worship music. So while I don't understand when I'm reading the scriptures yet, but, let me listen to the audio Bible so the word can start. Like, these are just little things, Because you're right. Sometimes persons' situations are different. And what came to me, I wonder the woman, we always talk about the woman at the well. And you realize that Jesus met her when she was with her man. She had the man there. The man was still there. Right? And God met her, and I wondered, when she went back home, suppose she lived with him. And she didn't have any family, so probably she would have, I don't know, she could have had to stay with him another 3 months before she could get somewhere else. I don't know. Because remember in that time, women did not have certain, they didn't have certain things that they could do their own livelihood. So I'm thinking, okay, there was a situation she had to go back home to, but she already knew that she met the maker. She made up her mind to say, listen, I'm running after him. But okay, all right, Lord. All right, so God, tell me what's my next move. Lord, who can I connect to?
Yes.
Look at the love of God.
Yes.
The prodigal son in his song says, Jesus bigger than what people say. He's bigger than sometimes what we as church people perceive. He's greater. He's more forgiving than we want to accept. He's more merciful than we want to admit.
Yes.
That's the truth.
Ooh.
We don't understand, We can't understand why he will be so merciful to somebody that has rejected him.
Yes.
We don't understand because the first thing, we're in a society where we cut off people. We just cut them off. Hello?
Yeah.
I'm going to
Hmm.
forgive them, but that means I'm going to reconcile with them. Imagine if Jesus did say that. Bowie, oh God, man. Robin, as we close out for today, whatever the Lord has placed on your heart right now, whoever you feel led to say something to, I want you to talk to. I want you to say something to some teenagers listening right now. Because you guys know I'm passionate about my teen girls. And we're not talking to them, we're not telling them the truth of this life, that somebody might come and introduce them to this because they don't have an education, because they don't. Hey, Robin, I want you to share something to my teen girls. Then
Yes.
I want you
Yes.
to just talk to some believers. Whatever the
Yes.
Lord placed on your heart.
Yes. I want to say to the teens, what glitters, what always glitters, is not always gold. And I know that when you watch TV, I know when you see, the music industry and the videos, I know it looks glamorous, but it's really not. It's a very lonely and painful place to be. And I know that, depending on your background and where you come from, you may feel like, well, he's paying me attention, they're giving me the attention that I always wanted, or whatever the case may be. But I want you to know that it's a setup. That's how they get in. This is why I stated earlier that the first level was through the abuse. When these people are predators and they understand, they literally are intentionally targeting, young ladies that come from broken homes, that may deal with self-esteem issues, that have been abused, and they prey on you. So that shining armor that they're presenting to you, it is false. It's a setup. One of my favorite scriptures is, "And behold, no marvel, for the devil himself turns himself into an angel of light." And that's essentially what I'm saying. What looks to be okay, what looks to be glamorous, what looks to be like it's the greatest thing happening and the best thing shaking and popping is really a ploy. It's really a trick to get you so that they could slowly kill your soul. And so I want you to know that no matter what you may be facing, no matter what you may be going through, no matter what it is that you deal with at home, and I know you're probably wondering what I was wondering, but if God really loved me, why would he allow these things to happen to me? I want you to know that your pain, your hurt, God is not blind to it. He sees it all. He knows it all. And there is a plan for you. In the grand scheme of things, me now looking back, I see that it was so necessary. You know how David said it was good for me that I was afflicted. Today, I can say, oh, it was so good for me that I was afflicted, because I can now help other people that were afflicted. And what do I mean by affliction? I'm talking about the pain, the abuse, the anguish, the abandonment, the rejection, the feeling alone, the feeling worthless, the feeling not enough, the feeling that all you're good for is the abuse that you are experiencing. But I want you to know that God loves you immensely, and he's with you, even when it feels like he's not with you. And you too will be able to help others and effectively speak to others. I want you to think of it like this. You know how they say, God experienced Jesus when he came, he experienced everything that we experience, right? There is not a priest, right, that has not been touched with our infirmities, right? The word says, right? So He came and experienced everything that we experienced. The only difference is that he didn't sin, right? And that's what makes God so in tune with our grievances. So I want you to think of it like that. God trusts you enough. He trusted me enough to be touched, thank you, Jesus, with the infirmities of others so that we would be able to effectively minister. You can't minister to something that you have not touched. You cannot minister to something that you have not felt. You cannot help someone where you haven't walked through at least something similar that they have walked through. So even though it hurts right now, understand that there is a greater plan and a larger scheme of things that's happening where you too are going to be able to get to a place where you can see and say, oh God, it was good for me that I was afflicted. Because of the wisdom, because of the knowledge, because of the insight you'll have, the strength and the capacity that he's building even now. Just the insight, there's so many things that are happening while you're going through that's hard to see because we're blinded by the pain. So I just want to say, don't get caught up in the ploy. Don't get caught up in what seems to be glittering before your eyes. Stay focused. Get your education. I know we hear that all the time, but it's true. Get your education and get in contact with people that you can speak with and that can help you work through what you're experiencing and your pain. What I would say to the believers is we honestly have to do better, and we really need to come to a place where we are truly exercising the love of Christ. And I feel like we often misunderstand what it means to judge, because it is our job as a believer to judge, but we're supposed to be judging, what is good for us to do, not the person. And so I would say to believers, exercise the love of Christ truly every day. Become intentional about hearing the heart of others and try. I know it's hard because we're human, and we react. Try not to get caught up in the actions of people, but try to understand, how did you get here and what is going on? Because there is a story behind every action. There's a story behind every experience or situation or circumstance. And so that's what I would say to the believers. I also would say, get educated. Do not blindly go out here and Bible bash and try to reprimand. That is not the way. And it's like, I get so overwhelmed and I become so burdened because I'm a black sheep. I know how it feels to be out there on the other side and to consistently be judged by people that are supposed to be loving you to life, but instead they are condemning you to hell, a place that they don't even have a right to put you in. And so I would say, become educated, like Crystal said, if you don't have the grace to minister to people in that way, in that particular area, sow into a ministry that does have the grace and the anointing to do it and save a life that way. But we have to do better. We have to do so much better. Just so much better. That it's too much hatred in the world already. It's so much hatred. There's so much murder. There's so much injustice. There's so much racism. There is so much already present in the world. As believers, we are supposed to be a light on the hill. We are supposed to be the salt of the earth. And it saddens my entire spirit when I hear people say things like, but they're supposed to be Christians, they're supposed to be believers. Because we have become like the world. We're throwing people away like the world. We have judgment like the world. We're hating people like the world. And while you never may pick up a knife and murder somebody, you murder people with your words. You slander people with your gossip and with your judgment. And you don't think it's murder because you haven't physically killed someone, but what you don't understand is that you're murdering the soul and the spirit of a person that is precious. We are all precious in his sight, from the children to the adults. And so we need to esteem and respect each other as that. No matter what the person is doing, they are still a soul. Period.
Wow. Wow. So we're going to end on that note because I want what Robin has said to soak in. It's not the high, Shandai. What she has spoken is truth to penetrate our soul, to challenge us, to challenge me personally. What am I doing to allow the kingdom of darkness to seem like it's being more glorified than the kingdom of God? Where am I not shining my light? Where am I dimming my light? Where am I being judgmental? Where am I being so high minded that I'm not realizing that there are souls perishing? Where am I not showing love? Where do I need healing? How can I offer healing? Yes, to persons that have been into prostitution, to persons that have been in are exotic dancers, to persons that have done abortions, persons that are that have, I don't know, even somebody that has killed somebody, that are struggling with drugs, or like, Holy Spirit, I pray that this session will be a session. I pray even as we close, well, we're not kind of closing for true confessions. We do have some other true confessions coming up, but let this penetrate in our hearts. So I thank you for joining us for another episode of the Diary for Jesus Girl podcast. I thank you for listening. I do pray that many of you know somebody that is an unbeliever. An unbeliever, you need to share this with an unbeliever, but you also need to share this with a teen. You need to share this with men. You need to share this because Robin spoke from her diary. This is her diary. I'm going to leave the link to her Instagram, to her Facebook, to her book on Amazon. She spoke about educating herself. The word of God tells us that the people perish because of lack of knowledge. We can't help anybody if we don't know. We want to know what's going on in the different industries. I'm going to share Pursuit International. That's my friend Stacy's. They deal with sex trafficking, human trafficking. I'm going to share their details also, where you can find out some more information. There are people all over the world. This is just a teeny bit of what's going on. Let us think about the hunger, the starvation. Let us think about there's so many things that are happening. And this is why the Bible tells us that the harvest is plenty and the laborers are few. And it's not that we don't have enough Christians, because the church and the pews, like, see the mega churches, we see the mega church, the church and the pews are filled. But why is the laborers are few? Because we don't want to do the work. We're thinking about ourselves. Everybody's thinking about themselves. We're thinking about. Thank you, Robin, for sharing. Thank you. I believe that you will be on this podcast again. I know that I just believe that there's a other aspect of the spiritual aspect that I do think that you should talk about. So I'm gonna arrange for a part two. Not this one is not talking about the adult. We're gonna talk about the spiritual aspect, right? Of just sexual immorality. So I'm gonna invite her back. But in the meanwhile, thank you again for listening to the Diary of a Jesus Girl podcast, where we discuss real life issues of the committed Christian woman, where we want to learn to love Jesus, to love like Jesus, to impact like Jesus. Have a blessed week, and I'll see you next week for another real, raw, relevant, riveting conversation. God bless you.
Diary of a Jesus girl. Jesus girl.